Chapter 922, Mushrooms and Fish. Looking at the lights that emitted out of the oriel window, the hooded and masked Alger was just about to ask about the details of the operation when he suddenly saw a shadow grow out of the rich darkness. It materialized as a lanky, pale, sickly young man. Bloodless Heath Doyle. Alger quickly recognized the man to be the second mate of the future. Heath didn't look at him as he directly said to Katlia, "Captain, they didn't notice anything and turned those mushrooms into cream of mushroom soup. They plan to use the prepared pan-fried fish as tonight's main course." "Excellent." Katlia removed the heavy glasses on her nose and used her eyes, which had a mysterious purple hue, to look through the neighboring house's dining hall across the walls. Heath Doyle didn't speak further as his body instantly darkened and returned to the shadows. It was unknown where he had slunk to. After hearing their conversation, and combining it with what Ma'am Hermit had previously mentioned, Alger had a rough idea of the core element to tonight's operation. Mushrooms. Poisonous mushrooms. Although he didn't know what method Admiral of Stars was using to cause the spiritual intuition of the Beyonders inside to be ineffective and not be able to distinguish normal mushrooms from poisonous mushrooms, Alger believed that there was nothing impossible in mysticism. He hesitantly said, "Will this cause Artisan Sealf's death?" Unaffiliated artisans were rather rare, so Alger didn't wish to lose such a friend if there was still room for turning things around. To him, the best case was to imprison the fellow and make him the exclusive artisan for both him and the hermit. "No," Katlia calmly shook her head as she explained, "be it from the information you gave and the observations of my crew, there's one point to take note of. Sealf doesn't like fish, and he even hates it. This might have to do with him getting a fish bone stuck in his throat when he was young." And it was because of this matter that Katlia ultimately chose the mushroom strategy. This could effectively reduce the enemy's effective strength while allowing their side to minimize any risks. The dark environment-bred mushrooms that devoured flesh and blood and were the first to be eliminated by Admiral of Stars because they could let Beyonders with sharp spiritual perception sense something amiss. This was akin to facing something poisonous. In addition, Beyonders who believed in the primordial moon had a rather deep understanding of herbs, plants, and fruits. Relying on visual observation, they were likely able to identify mushrooms that posed danger. To trick them, the only way was for the food to be harmless itself. Only through its contact with something else did a mutation occur. Based on this, the mushrooms previously created by Frank were perfect. If the two conditions of fish and water weren't met, the mushrooms were ordinary mushrooms. They could neither poison a person to death or cause diarrhea. It would be digested bit by bit and be broken down into its different components before being expelled by the body. At this point, any more fish and water was useless. For this, Katlia specially got Frank to temporarily abandon his experiment and had obtained a batch of mushrooms. She also promised to hunt an Aurora Order Rose Bishop for him. "Hates fish," Alger whispered, feeling like he couldn't keep up with the hermit's thought process. He had clearly asked if the poisonous mushrooms could cause Artisan Sealf's death, but the answer he received was that the artisan wouldn't die because he didn't like fish and even hated it. Is there some connection between the two? Alger questioned inwardly in puzzlement, but he didn't say it out loud. He maintained his silence and planned to observe more and take note. After a while, there were screams from inside the house, followed by pangs of painful grunts and vomiting. "Begin," Katlia issued an order in an abnormally succinct manner. Her figure instantly turned transparent, turning into a sculpture formed by countless stars. The sculpture shattered instantly as bright stars surged towards the house's door and drilled through a gap. As stars gathered inside, Katlia's figure materialized. Then she heard howling winds and sounds of collisions. The door frame shook before the door opened. Wearing a hood and mask, Alger entered the targeted building not much slower than Admiral of Stars. He swept his gaze and quickly took in the situation at the dining hall. Artisan Sealf was retreating from the table with a look of horror. On the ground were two men and a woman who were constantly vomiting mushrooms. At their chests, their clothes had ripped apart as one mushroom after another sprouted. Upon sensing someone enter, they subconsciously looked up, revealing bunches of white spores on their faces. Under his mask, Alger's face involuntarily twitched. Although he was experienced and knowledgeable, and with him being a beyonder who had his fair share of experience seeing horrifying scenes, such a scene still left a striking visual and mental impact on him. Katlia had expected it, but she had never expected such a harrowing sight. After a moment of surprise, she held her right hand to her mouth and blew a whistle. Illusory ropes emerged from the ground and coiled around the 3 primordial moon believers like snakes. "Is there a way to stop this?" Katlia said to the shadow in the corner. After a moment of silence, Heath Doyle's voice sounded. Frank said that he hadn't obtained a way to stop it in his experiments. The only way is cremation. Cremation. Katlia's brows quivered. Immediately, she took out some powder from a pocket and threw them out. The powder seemed to have a life of their own, as they accurately landed on the 3 primitive believers and the various mushrooms. Silently, they burst into scarlet flames and silently burned whatever they touched. Artisan Sealf was already dumbstruck from witnessing the mutation. When someone intruded, he had thought of resisting using his mystical item, but he quickly recognized the intruder to be Admiral of Stars Katlia. Hence, he wisely gave up and stood in his spot, waiting. He knew that he was of significant value. No matter where he went, he was not someone who would immediately be killed. Furthermore, Admiral of Stars never had any infamy to her name. Worst comes to worst, I'll just have to join the Star Pirates. Besides, this pirate admiral seems to be more beautiful than the bounty notices. She exudes a completely different air. Sealf tugged at his wolf fang necklace and forced a smile, awaiting the intruder to mention her purpose. Katlia glanced at him and seriously observed his appearance. All she could confirm was that he was a classic example of someone from Intis, but she failed to find any similarities to Queen Mystic. The pirate admiral deliberated and said, "I had been introduced by a friend, hoping to get you to create a mystical item, but I later discovered that you were with some primordial moon believers. The 3 of them aren't too strong and couldn't restrain you at all. Why do you still remain here?" In this operation, Katlia's main hypothetical enemy was actually the artisan himself. This was because she could neither kill him or control him. Furthermore, he still had many well-matched mystical items, making him a powerful enemy. Yet, things developed smoothly to her surprise. Sealf said with a smile, "They had strong ones in Bayam in the beginning. Using particular floral fragrances and powders, they infected me with a strange ailment, making me increasingly weaker." Katlia casually sized him up and said, "You have already recovered, so why aren't you taking this opportunity to escape?" Alger stood by the side silently. He didn't say a word, afraid that his voice might betray him. Artisan Sealf chuckled and said, "While I was under their control, they told me that as long as I believed in the primordial moon, I could use certain rituals to treat my chronic illness. I couldn't resist the temptation and tried it, and it really succeeded. I found the feeling of being a man again." Having said that, he came to an abrupt halt, realizing that he had said too much, exposing his secret illness. This is him letting himself go too far when it comes to women, thus slowly losing his abilities in bed. Alger chuckled inwardly. Sealf looked up and glanced at them. Seeing that no one was mocking him, he coughed slightly and continued, "It wasn't something that relied on medicine. I really recovered my young, virile state. Later, I had 2 dreams of a moon that was bloody and very enticing. I believed that I had already become a believer of the primordial moon. Therefore, I didn't dare to escape." Katlia and Alger silently exchanged gazes, simultaneously passing the death sentence on him. As long as someone truly believed in an evil god, devil, or some other secret existence, unless they were willing to continue in the faith and slowly become crazier, there was no regret. Even if they were protected by official Beyonder factions and didn't suffer any problems for prolonged periods, they might end up strangling themselves in their sleep years later. This was nearly unsalvageable, unless they earned the right to receive the blessings of a grounded angel like a pope of a major church, or if they accepted being isolated by certain sealed artifacts and live underground forever. Of course, under such situations, there were also many who did nothing and managed to live to a ripe old age before dying a natural death. However, they were mostly ordinary people, targets that the evil gods, devils, and hidden existences easily ignored. As for Sealf, he was a very useful artisan. Katlia didn't mention the primordial moon believers again. To her, it wasn't a big problem whether the artisan believed in an evil god. As long as he could be communicated with to reach a deal for cooperation and not go crazy from time to time, the other matters weren't something a pirate needed to be worried about. She switched topics and said, "What mystical items do you have now? I'll choose a few and leave you with the rest." Towards such a development, Artisan Sealf wasn't too surprised. She was a pirate, not a policewoman. Doing a heist in passing was extremely normal. For her to leave him some items was something he should earnestly thank her for. In fact, with his level and items, it was possible for him to successfully escape if he went all out, but he lacked the courage. All right. Sealf took out a pair of grayish-white glasses from his breast pocket. Gargoyle glasses. As long as sightlines are met, it can cause the other party to turn numb all over as though they are being petrified. There are two negative effects. First, if one wears it and looks into a mirror, one will turn numb as well. Second, one's body will turn heavy, making one unagile. Isn't that the item I reserved? So it has already been made. Looking at the artisan, Alger couldn't help but narrow his eyes.